So it just occurred to me that I've made a bunch of videos about tube amps, but I've never actually shown off mine, which is dusty. Let's go through it. Okay, now I'm gonna hardcore nerd out for a little bit here, but don't worry, it's not the whole video. Up here it's got two preamp tubes, a 12AX7 and a 12AT7, two power tubes, those are both EL84s. It's got a can full of capacitors, a output transformer, and a power transformer. And then down here we've got a pilot light, volume, bass, treble, gain, and an input. Now if I flip it over and take off the bottom, you'll see all the wiring inside of here, which yes is quite a bit of a rat's nest. It looks kind of disorganized, but there was a bit of thought put into avoiding crosstalk between closely spaced wires. I built this in a really small chassis because I wanted to make a really compact amp, and so there was a lot of difficulty in building things so close together. Now each preamp tube has two triode amplifiers, so 4 in total. The guitar signal comes in the input jack and goes into the first triode where it gets amplified. Then it goes to the volume knob. From the volume knob it goes into the second triode where it gets amplified some more, and then it comes out to the tone stack, which consists of the bass and treble knobs and this series of capacitors in here to change the tone. From there the signal goes into the third triode amplifier where it gets amplified even more. Now at this point, the signal's amplified so much that the theoretical output wave is more than this tube can actually produce, so it cuts off the top and bottom of the wave, and this is how you get overdrive distortion. And this tube is biased with these cathode resistors such that it will clip the wave unevenly, because that sounds warmer. And then the signal goes to the fourth triode amplifier, but that one doesn't amplify. Because in a push-pull amplifier, you essentially have one tube pulling the speaker and one tube pushing the speaker, because that's more efficient than having a single tube do both. And in order to make that happen, you need to have two signals. The original signal from the third triode for one tube, and then the exact opposite or inverted signal to go to the other tube. That's what the fourth triode does. It takes the input and produces two mirror image signals. From there it goes to the overall volume knob, and then to the power tubes. Power tubes can move a lot more current than preamp tubes, so they're much better at driving speakers. But it's still not enough to directly drive a speaker, so these are connected to an output transformer, which takes the high voltage low current of tubes and converts it to the low voltage high current that speakers run on. Then from there to the output jack and to the speaker cap. Also, some of it goes through this over here to the cathode of the third triode. That gets an inverted signal to the third triode and cleans up the power section a little bit. Kind of works like noise canceling headphones. Meanwhile, these green wires over here are 6 volts, which comes in to power the filaments that warm the tubes up so they can run. These yellow wires are 5 volts and they go to a full wave bridge rectifier and then to some color changing LEDs, as well as some LEDs inside the tube sockets to light up the tubes. The red leads from the power transformer, which are over 400 volts, go to this rectifier over here where it gets converted to DC and goes to the first filter cap, and then to all the other capacitors inside this can. That provides the power that the tubes run on. Then over here is the bias circuit, and this knob here is to adjust the bias of the power tubes. Short version is warmer bias sounds warmer, but colder bias, your tubes last longer and you use less power. I actually usually bias this kind of cold because it gets used a lot. Okay, that's the end of the super nerd part. The speaker cab has two 10-inch speakers, and it can be mounted either this way or this way. It's got feet on both sides. Inside the cab I've got two speakers, an Alnico magnet speaker and a ceramic magnet speaker. Alnico magnet speakers supposedly sound sweeter, so I use that one when I'm miking it up, and the ceramic magnet speaker produces more power per watt, so that's for really pushing out the power it shows. Now this cab is 16 ohms, so when I'm using just this cab I put it in 16 ohm mode, and when I'm using two cabs I flip it up to 8 ohm mode, which just chooses a different leg on the output transformer to adjust the impedance. Now the way to play a simple 4-knob amp like this is if you want a clean tone, you just turn the volume up all the way and use the gain as your volume knob. And when you want a dirty sound, you pin the gain knob and use the volume as the volume knob. Kind of like. And if you use the bridge pickup and roll off both the bass and treble, you can even get like that 90s alt rock sound, like. So anyway, yeah, that's my amp. I think of it as a good functional conversation piece.